There is nothing more assuring than a quiet warning about what could be happening to your money, the American economy, the global scheme of things fiscally, one that is based on sound principles and the knowledge that nothing good ever comes from panic. So when one of the more famous investors, in a calm and rational voice, uses words such as financial Armageddon, it may cause one to consider the reality of such a phrase and whether or not we should all be building financial bomb shelters and taking solace in the fact all will work itself out. Let us begin there. Welcome back to veteran economist, former denizen of Wall Street, and author of The American Dream Under Fire, Steve Beaman, joined by the equally veteran economist, syndicated columnist, and professor of business at the University of Maryland, Peter Morici. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Let's go ahead and begin right off the bat here. Jim Rogers, a famous investor of note, says that financial Armageddon is coming, and he's blaming poor practices from central bankers for all of our ills. Here's what he said on CNN.
We're all going to pay a horrible price for the incompetence of these central bankers. We've got a bunch of academics and bureaucrats who don't have a clue what they're doing. This is going to be a disaster in the end. You should be very worried, and you should be prepared.
Okay, Steve, I come to you first. Gee, we're all feeling so much better now, and everything's fine. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to go put everything under the mattress right now. Is Jim Rogers just blowing some hyperbole smoke here, or does he have something to it?
No, I think he's stating something that has fundamental truth to it, but I want to make sure people don't panic, to your point earlier, because at 7,500 on the Dow several years ago, everybody said the same thing, and here we are at 15,000. So it's not a matter of are we creating a debt bubble and a central bank bubble. It's more a question of how it plays out over the long term, and I don't think it's as cut in stone as Jim Rogers says it is.
So, Peter, here's one of the lines. Unconventional monetary strategies will lead to a stock market rally in the near future, but deep trouble later this year and into 2017. Again, that's part of what he was inferring. What's your take?
Well, I don't know that people can call turns in the market or the economy that precisely. That's why more and more economists like myself are worried about the health and durability of this recovery. But we're not marking down our forecasts for a big recession because we don't know when it's going to happen. It's very hard to call turning points. I do know this, that monetary policy these days is papering over the sins of central governments. It's not so much that we print too much money, it's that we're printing so much money because the governments are running the economy so badly. In America, too much regulation and too many entitlements. In Europe, too much regulation and too many entitlements. In Japan, too much regulation and too few babies. And in China, well, just manifest arrogance and incompetence to think that they can, a couple of hundred old men can manage an economy of 1.6 billion people. It's absurd. So central banks in that environment pump a lot of money into the system to juice the market and keep it going. But markets are becoming more and more frightened.
Everybody calm down. That's why we're here on a weekly basis, to make sure that no one panics. Steve, here's something else. You wrote a column recently for Epoch Times, our good friend Jerry Doyle and the folks there. Bernie Sanders espouses a destructive ideology. Really? What do you mean by that?
Well, it follows on a statement I've made many times that people who supported the Great Society owe a big fat apology to millions and millions of American families who became trapped in institutional poverty as a result of those programs. These big social programs that everybody thinks are utopian and sound so wonderful, and they become a siren's call for more benefits for themselves. In the long run, the very people that the Bernie Sanders try to help are the ones who suffer from it. And we can see that in the crime rates in the inner cities. We can see it in the destitution that's faced by people, the lack of real hope that exists based on fourth and fifth generation welfare families. So what he's doing is selling people snake oil that's incredibly dangerous.
So let me come to you on this one here, Peter, because one of the two words that Steve had in the article that really caught me was pure ignorance, when he is talking about a lot of the younger people who jump right on the bandwagon for Bernie Sanders. Is it that simple, just to know that they're ignorant and they really don't understand what the man's saying? But gee, it all sounds good.
Well, some of the stuff that Bernie Sanders is saying does sound good for a reason. It's because it is good, but most of it's not. The thing is that these young folks have a very short institutional memory. They don't have one. They weren't around for the Great Society and so forth. But let's look at healthcare. On healthcare, the Europeans have a better system than we do, and they have a variety of systems, actually, and most of them work quite well and better than ours do because they deliver healthcare about as good as ours or better for much less money. At the same time, these poor kids working at Starbucks after getting a state college degree and having $60,000 in debt are forced to buy insurance they can't afford on websites, and then when they try to use the insurance, they find out they have $2,000 deductibles. Obamacare is a disaster, but Bush care was a disaster as well. And Sanders is promising to try something different. I can't blame them for that. It's the rest of the things that Sanders wants to do that is so disturbing. Or I should say, the rest of the things less break up the big banks. I'm a big fan of that.
Do your homework, people. Do your homework. That's all we continually talk about. I got 60 seconds. One last thing. Here's a quick soundbite. This is workers at the Carrier manufacturing plant in Indianapolis caught on video when they were told the plant was heading for Mexico. Here's how they reacted.
It became clear that the best way to stay competitive and protect the business for long term is to move production from our facility in Indianapolis to Monterrey, Mexico.
"15 seconds, Peter. They're heading for Mexico." Just gets worse, right? There's no stopping this.
Those are good union workers. I'd like to know how many of them voted for Obama, and now they'll go into the voting booth again and pull the lever for Clinton instead of Trump. You know something? They got what they paid for by lining up behind that demagogue.
15 seconds to you, Steve.
I think he's right. I think you have union work rules and wages that are a problem, but governmental regulation is killing American business as well as the tax rates that we impose on these companies. It's no wonder in a competitive world they're going to go to the lower cost areas with lower regulatory issues. So these people brought it on themselves in many ways.
And the statement says the move to Mexico must still be discussed with the local union. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of discussion there. It's going to be goodbye,
Right.
have a nice... Yeah, exactly. That's a discussion. Have a nice day. To you gentlemen as well. Peter Morici, Steve Beaman. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next week. Hey, one comment about 9/11 has me enraged. It should enrage you as well. Next, here on The Hardline.